Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of Movies That Move We. Today we will be talking about The Secret Lives of Bees, based on the book by Sue Monk Kidd. So this was produced by Will and Jada Pinkett Smith's company, which completely I forgot about this. This film is from 2008, so sorry, not on my radar anymore. But we did rewatch it so that we can come back and talk about this film. Now, this took place in the story is set, 1964. Around that time, there were a lot of things happening as far as civil rights. One of the first scenes that you see, one of the earliest scenes that you see, is where Lily, who's played by Dakota Fanning, and Rosaline, played by Jennifer Hudson, they're walking together so that Rosaline can vote. And she was pretty much beat up for attempting to go vote. This led to both her and Lily leaving town together. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the movie or read the book, you're probably like, why would this little girl, who's about, 12, 13 years old, leave with her maid? Her mama was dead. Her dad was abusive AF. Okay, so that's your baseline for what's going on. Disclaimer, this isn't, even though it's set in that time period, if you haven't seen the film before, this isn't a beat you over the head with civil rights and watching beyond that scene with Jennifer Hudson. There's not a whole lot about Black people getting beat up and all of that stuff.
Like, it has a storyline of its own. It's just they have to include those elements in it because of the time period that it's in, basically.
The history is written as part of this setting. One of the things that was mentioned was the bombing of the church in, where was that, in Georgia?
Is that Birmingham?
Birmingham, thank you. Oh, go ahead, girl. in Birmingham, where the four, I think four of them were murdered. There was one other sister who was injured. She's still alive, I believe. But that's kind of those are the major historical things that were mentioned. The thing that I thought about, and I don't know if you paid attention to it, the tropes that were used, because even though this is a feel-good story, it doesn't start with the Black people being in blatant oppression. As a matter of fact, what you see is a community of Black women who are running their own businesses. They gather together as a community, and this is what Dakota Fanning's character Lily finds when she shows up. It's not what she's used to seeing, but there's some kind of comfort for her.
Yeah.
But it was still, the tropes were still there, if that makes sense. So you have Queen Latifah's character, what was her name? August Boatright. Her character is the eldest sister, but she's the matriarch of this family of 3 sisters who run a beekeeping business, honey making business. She is the mother, the wise one, the spiritual one, the one who has all the answers. It feeds into the not white savior, but the Black savior. It's like, I'm going to take care of this white person. I'm going to be their hero, kind of thing. Did you feel or see that?
I guess in the beginning of the film, you could kind of say that it has that energy, but I like how or towards the end, when she's like talking to Lily about the relationship that she had with her mother that passed, like when August was talking to Lily about Lily's mom and how she took care of her when she was younger. I like how she kind of like, it was something that she said where it was kind of like, I loved her, but it was a complicated love. It wasn't this fairy book type situation where it's like, oh yeah, I love her. I'm coming in and I'm gonna nurture her and love her because I just want to. It was like in those times we didn't have any option but to do that. You know, that was
Domestic work.
That was the only types of jobs we had. And even before that, we were being used to nurse white people's babies right. and stuff like that. It wasn't an option. It was kind of like, it's like when you're put in a situation because you have to do it, or it's kind of like when you go somewhere that you really don't want to go, and then you end up kind of building a bond with the people that are there too, because you're just basically forced into the situation. That's kind of what it was, and I like that they touched on that, because it's kind of like, yeah, she had that element about her that was responsible and wise, and like, but there were little snippets that I saw where, okay, she's human though, and she's showing that part of herself that's like, I still have my stuff going on. Even when she was talking about, like, when Lily was asking her, has she ever been in love? You know, it was very much like, I've been in love, and I've had that fairy book love before, but as a woman that wants that level of independence and running my own business and things like that for myself, you know, with the times that we're in, it's just not something that I can really dedicate all my time or my heart to. So it's best for me to just kind of like, you know, stay in my lane and do the independent woman thing. So it's like, yeah, I see where it could be kind of like a trope, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like the movie did a good job with like clarifying the stereotypical type stuff with a little bit of a backstory, or a little bit of the character clarifying their feelings, like about certain things.
Yeah, and like you said, I like that she said it was complicated. So she was putting it at that point on a child's level, you know, instead of, and again, it feeds in it. I'm not gonna lie, that small element made me uncomfortable.
It didn't make me uncomfortable. You know why? Because this film and I love both films like a lot, but this film and The Help, I always kind of like get certain scenes mixed up because they're very similar to me. Very similar. And Viola Davis's character in The Help reminded me a lot of, in that scene, it reminded me a lot of August. So it was kind of like, and I cry every time I watch The Help at the part where she's, Amy, and she just wants her to come back, because it's like literally like, and it even goes back to like, okay, I'm taking care of a white person's kids all day, and I'm creating this like mother-daughter, mother-son bond with them, but where am I left with my own kids and my own family? So it's kind of like, it opens up the door for that conversation to be had, and I feel like that is where it can kind of, I mean, I get the trope thing, but at the same time, it leaves that openness to have that discussion about, okay, what were these women really going through behind the scenes? You know, yeah, it looks good. You know, they got this house, they're running this business, they have it all together in this time period where Black people couldn't have all this stuff.
It's not that Black people couldn't have all of that stuff.
Or it was harder for them to obtain it, if that makes sense.
I don't want to lean too hard into that either, because when you think about thriving communities like Greenwood, Oklahoma, that was a thriving community. Doctors, lawyers, pharmacists. Black people were able to attain it, maintain it, and expand it, but the white politics, okay, angry white people came in and destroyed it. You know, so it's not that it wasn't attainable. It's not that we weren't doing it. I guess the way I would explain it is, when we did do it, we had to be careful of where we did it and how much people may have known about how successful we were. Not only that, I think, again, with the example of Greenwood, that was done within that community. The money was moving around that black community. Not saying white people didn't show up and shop and all of that other stuff, but the money circulated there. Okay? When I say that there's an element of it that makes me uncomfortable, yes, she explained to Lily on a level that she thought a 12-year-old could understand, hey, it was a complicated relationship. She didn't get into the politics with Lily, and what it put me in the mind of is what we're hearing going on in certain parts of the country now, where information about Black history, Indigenous history, Latino history is being taken out because we don't want these white kids to have to think about that. That's kind of where I was like, okay, she did that well, but, and I'm pretty sure that wasn't thought of when the book was written because it wasn't happening at this level.
Yeah.
Back when the book was written. But it just that's where it set my mind. And yeah, I even compared it like you did to The Help.
Mm-hmm.
And what I remember about The Help, one of the things that came out, because that was controversial, because it was like, okay, we're glorifying, the help. Again, we're seeing Black women in, this matronly role for white people's children, but we don't even talk about theirs so much, and we have people saying, oh, we loved our nanny was wonderful, but
they still don't get...
You love somebody that you paid to come into your home, and that's the complication.
And even when the politics did come up, it was very much like, oh, well, we can't really do anything about that. That's just how it is. And it's like...
Right. So it kind of put me in the mind of all of that, because shortly after the movie came out, there were a lot of white people who were raised by nannies who were like, wait, you guys got it all wrong. We had a great relationship with our nanny. We loved our nanny.
Yeah, but did you dive into the nanny's perspective of doing this job? No.
Well, no, because what they got the nurturing they needed from there. And the reason why we were bringing this up so heavily is because, again, August was Lily's mother's nanny. And here comes Lily not realizing what she's walking into. She didn't know that was her mother's nanny when she showed up. All she had was the label from a bottle of honey. And she showed up there, and it was like, okay, this is a good place to rest for a while. And then the rest of the story came together. But it's like, she nurtured her mother, and now she's nurturing the daughter. So the complicated was the right word for it. And that's one scene where I was like, oh my God, she explained that so well, but I don't like it. That's where I was in my head with it.
But I feel like, knowing what we know now, they had to kind of put it in the perspective of someone from that time period. At that time, it probably wasn't really a conversation that they necessarily wanted to have, even if the white person involved was understanding or was open to understanding. It's kind of like they automatically are like, they'll never understand. They'll never get it. And even now, it's kind of still the same thing. I think that's why a lot of people have that reaction, because it's just kind of like, okay, you guys are never going to get it, though. Like, not get it to the full extent. I think even in The Help, when she was trying to talk to Skeeter about certain things, I noticed how, like, she would tell her what was going on, but then it was very much like, I'm not going to go too deep into my feelings about certain things with you because you're the other side. And only my side can understand the real struggle and the real emotions that I deal with day in and day out, not you. Even though you can sympathize and even understand where the disconnect is, you're never going to be in my shoes to understand how I really, really feel. So I think with this film, I like that they did that because it gave the same kind of air where it's like, if this were discussed in a book club, if this were discussed in schools or something like that, it opens that conversation up. That's why it didn't really make me 100% uncomfortable, because it's kind of like a tidbit they're putting in the film to start a discussion.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me, because it's like, this may really like educate someone or really
get you to think, put yourself in the mindset of either character to say, how was it received? You know, based on how it was delivered, how was it received? What would happen if it was delivered differently? And again, we're talking about South Carolina, and I think Tibron was in North Carolina, but we're talking about the Carolinas in 1964. You still had to be careful as a Black person what you said to whom.
Yeah, because my thing is, honestly, the story of the Black person's perspective in that time period, you get to be in that person's shoes watching the film. I'm just being honest. When you're watching these films, you get emotionally invested. You really start to see that side's perspective of things. So when they throw little tidbits out there, the Caucasian watcher is going to be like, well, darn. Now I can kind of see why they might have been feeling that way. Or now I understand why August said it was complicated. Because here it is, she's come this far and she's done all this stuff, and she was living in a time period where people hated her just because of the color of her skin.
Right.
So it's like, literally, I feel like I wasn't bothered by it. I feel like it opens that conversation, but I can understand your perspective as well. I just didn't get that same vibe, because I'm just like, you know, it needs to be discussed. It needs to be kind of talked about, and
it's something that we really don't.
And it was a realistic.
Until we have stories like this, we really don't get into it. It's just the fact that, hey, Black women were maids, they were nannies, they were cooks.
Yeah.
You know, because we're trying to come out of the Jim Crow era. You know, you're not going to see a whole lot of Black secretaries or anything like that. Or if they existed, they were relegated to a corner of the office, you know. But it's like, we know these things exist, but we never really delve into them until we delve into them. Right?
And I mean, that was, I feel like her reaction in that moment. I understand you saying you don't like it, but it's like that reaction, it was appropriate for that time period, because I feel like you also have to think about the fear that these people probably had. Like, they were probably like, if I really express how I feel, I'm going to end up in jail. I'm going to end up lynched and dead. Like, I'm going to end up in some type of predicament I don't want to be in. Like,
which is why Rosaline ended up running.
Yeah.
Because she's like, you know, she done poured her tobacco spit on the man's shoes, got beat up, was knocked out, arrested. And she was like, I can't stay because I'm here in this hospital bed, you know, charged. I'm not going to make it to the courtroom. They're going to come in and they're going to kill me tonight. So I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the white savior trope in that moment, because Lily came and got her out.
That's true.
You know, the self-made woman trope, again with August. You know, she inherited her family land and decided, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and be a beekeeper, and started making honey. And back to what we were saying about where the money circulates, she was selling her honey to members of the white community, stores that were reselling her stuff, and she was bold enough to have a label with a Black Mary on it. But you know, when they went looking for her, when Rosaline and Lily went looking for the business that made the honey, what they heard from a white store owner was, this is some of the best honey in the area. Go down the road and she's in the big pink house. Okay, so when Lily arrives, she's impressed by the house, and she's surprised to find Black owner of the business. The character that cracked me up was June, Alicia Keys. Angry Black woman trope. She trusted nobody. She was deep in the civil rights movement. She was handing out flyers, registering people to vote. And so when these two people showed up, these strange people, one of them being a little white girl, it's like, how long they staying? We don't got no food. We're not running a hotel. They can't stay. They're running from something. Their problem. August, get them out of here.
Mm-hmm.
She was very protective of her space, her family, her rights.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she even had a man who was in love with her, played by Nate Parker. Oh, what is this? Is it Park? I think his last name is Parker. He played her boyfriend, and again, her wall was completely up because she's like, my purpose in life is civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a woman. I don't need a man. She just had.
She was fighting for women's rights too. It wasn't just like, oh, you know, the civil rights movement. I feel like she was fighting for women's rights too, which it's like, for her to be vulnerable with a man and take his hand in marriage
was going to limit what she was able.
It's basically going against everything she's fighting for in a sense. Like,
so she spent a better part of the film, I'm not going to say actively at odds. It's like she said what she had to say when Lily and Rosaline showed up. She cut them side-eye every time she was in their space.
She was just very, like, apprehensive about both of them. So.
Yeah, but I think by the end, she did kind of soften up.
Yeah.
A little bit. She accepted their presence there.
Look, she was the one at the end, I think, that basically said, oh, well, if to Lily's dad, well, look, she's taken care of here, so she's more than welcome to stay. Like, you know, she was on board with that, which the contrast from the beginning to the end is like kind of mind blowing, because it's like, you didn't want this girl to set foot in this house at all.
She saw firsthand what Lily was dealing with, and again, that wall was thrown up in a different direction.
Yeah,
you know, her powers were used for good. Not that they were being used for bad, but within her household, she wasn't separating herself from things anymore. And then we have May. So May was the third sister. There were 4 sisters: August, May, June, and the other one was April.
Yeah, but April passed.
April was the twin, May's twin. She passed away. May was the sensitive soul, and oh my gosh, I have it written down. Who played May? Sophie Okonedo. Love her. You got to see her in the movie Skin. We got to watch the movie Skin. But anyway, Sophie Okonedo played May, and she was the sensitive spirit. She cried at the drop of a hat. If voices got raised, she got upset.
She got a panic attack.
Yeah, her character came off very childlike, but I kind of thought autism.
Yeah, that's what I thought too when I was watching it. Yeah. Even as a kid, I was like, okay, she was supposed to have like a mental like disability or something. That's kind of what I thought.
Right.
But I guess the more I kind of watched the movie, or over the years when I watched it, I'm like, maybe it was just like more of not a mental thing of like, oh, she was born with this.
She wasn't born.
Yeah, it's way. Like it was more like a psychological thing where she was really dealing with mental health issues but
early on from childhood. So
and at that time, I mean, they even mentioned like, you know, everybody was telling us to just put her in a home somewhere because especially at that time, mental health is just now being discussed now, like as a serious thing, you know. So I can only imagine in the 60s, like, you know, somebody acting like that, they probably automatically assume, hey, there's something seriously wrong with this person.
Scrambling brains or putting electric nodes on their head or anything like that. So they gave her space. Her sisters gave her space grieve how she needed to grieve, because that was a large part of it. I wasn't clear on when April passed away, if it was like when they were little kids or if she was a little bit older. I wasn't clear on that, but it kind of mentioned without mentioning the bond between twins, and that's part of what affected her and why she was so sensitive, and her way of dealing with whatever was upsetting her was to write a note, and she built a wall on one side of the property that they called the Wailing Wall. So whenever she was crying, she would write a note, stick it in the wall, put a rock on top of it, and that's kind of where she would leave her grief. Which brings us to the other thing about the Boatright family. That was a place of healing. You know, May had her way of healing. June needed to heal from some stuff, you know, and her way of doing it was immersing herself in civil rights. And she finally had her breakthrough at the end, where she let her wall down a little bit and proposed to her boyfriend. That it's not that simple. Y'all gotta watch it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But and then you have Rosaline and Lily, who, again, they were running from something. They had their own angst, their own fears, their own things that they were dealing with, and this became their safe place to kind of get it together. One of the things that I mentioned to Zenny just before we started recording, there was a point where August was showing Lily how to handle the beehives, how to get the honey, and she said, you know, bees have a secret life. And this is where the title comes from. And Lily was like, yeah. She was like, yeah, let me tell you about the secret lives of bees. And then something happened. There was yelling or screaming from the house, and they dropped everything and ran to see what was going on. So my grown self, I'm still sitting here like, but I want to hear about the secret lives of bees. Clearly, it's a secret. You don't find out what it is in the film. But basically, it's the whole thing is the metaphor between beekeeping, taking care of all of these beings to produce something sweet at the end. And it's about, overall, again, about healing, nurturing and healing. So I guess that's the secret. But overall, in spite of what I said about the nanny thing, it's a good movie. It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, go ahead, find it. Where did we watch it? Oh, I ended up buying it.
Yeah, I think you had it, and I didn't realize you had it on your
I got it on Vudu, but I'm pretty sure you can find it like on Prime or somewhere like that. Definitely give it a chance. Even though it's set in the 60s, it's not beating you over the head with civil rights stuff, even with June's character being so active in that movement. It's really about the relationship between all of these women and how they just kind of come together and take care of each other. Yeah. So that's all we have for today. The next movie that we have up is Posse. I know there are a lot of movies called Posse. This one is Mario Von Peebles' 1993 version, his version of Posse. So that is available for download. I don't think it's streaming anywhere, like on any platform, but I go through Vudu, now known as Fandango. So you may want to check that one out, download it, and give it a rewatch, because I think this only came out on streaming last year, and I've been looking for a DVD or something for a while and could not find it anywhere. So this is hot off the presses on streaming with purchasing. So anyway, we'll be back next week to talk about Posse. Until then, have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.